Hello, welcome to Needing a Meeting. My name is Carol. I'll be your host today, and we have Christy coming on to read us more from Smart Recovery's Friends and Family workbook, and we will be talking about healthy boundaries. Boy, that's a big topic for addicts. You know, some of us, it's a matter of even knowing that there's such a thing, knowing we've a right to them, learning what they are, learning how to enforce them and defend them, because you do have to do that, because people are going to try to run all over you roughshod all over your boundaries right and left if you give them a chance. And get the chat open here. What do we got going here? Hi, Seventh Son. How you doing? Good to see you. Woohoo! See you there? Anybody out there? Yes, I'm here. There I am. How are you today? How you doing? This is October through early November are kind of tricky times for you, huh, Seventh Son? If you ever want to come on and talk about it, you are most welcome. In fact, here we go. Anybody who would like to join us in the meeting room, love to have you in here. And Christy's going to be reading from her book, so just whenever she gets in here, we'll get that going. And if I was any better, I would have to be twins. Well, that's excellent. Totally. That's amazing. I love those answers. It's always good when we get to give those answers, isn't it? Ooh-wee. Yep. Waiting for Krista to get here because she's the one that's going to be reading from the workbook. But let's see here. Maybe there's something on boundaries here in Smart Recovery. Oh, there she is. Maybe. Who is it? Yep, there she is. Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
There you make it. Hey, Sarah, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. She is. There's the one who's going to be reading from the Healthy Boundaries from Friends and Family of Smart Recovery.
Hey!
Hey!
Good to see you again. Sorry I'm late. It never lets me on before the stream starts. I don't know. So,
Interesting. Because Steve can come in here early.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's interesting.
I'm sure it's something I'm doing. Like, I'm completely confident in that. I'll just have to look into it. So.
Make it till you make it, Seventh Son. That's right. You know what? I found my phone. I had it silenced from my meeting the day before, so I couldn't find it in the morning. Found it, then lost it again. Trying to scramble through here, getting the house clean enough for my friend to come look at it. Because Steve has just been, oh, Misha, hello. Hey, I'm so happy you're here. So happy you're here. Yes. So anyway, I had Steve complaining one too many times that he couldn't be Steve because he can't spread his electronics out everywhere to Frankenstein a machine out of 3 machines or whatever he wants to do like that. And
you still have a room of computers?
And that too, his computers, his sound equipment stuff, his guitars. And, I mean, as beautiful and wonderful as this place is, if that's how he's feeling, it ain't worth it. So I told my friend Susan, well, why don't you come out and tell us what we could sell this place for? Because every time we have that conversation, I'm like, we're not stuck here. This was Mom's dream. We made it happen. Yay, us.
Well, don't forget I'm a realtor.
Yes, that is true. Anyway, we're not selling.
I have multi-holidays going. Did you guys? I've got multi-holidays going. Since you're a realtor and you're selling, I got a Christmas tree and
Yes, I love it.
I thought that was going to be much bigger than it was, and I got so sad. So I'm going to put it outside. I'm going to get a gigantic Christmas tree. I have to post a picture of actually where I'm at because I'm surrounded in front of me and on the side completely by windows overlooking the lake and the trees.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
Really, it's a beautiful space, but yeah, so.
Well, Misha's needing a meeting, and we're here for it.
Yes.
I'm so glad you got your internet back going.
Yes.
Lord, that was a haul, wasn't it, girl? Woo. So anyway,
Sarah,
yeah,
I'm glad to see you back.
I had Susan come out here to tell me we're not selling.
Oh,
right.
So that's what that was about.
Oh, well.
And to be a marriage counselor and to give us advice on how to make this work.
Right. Oh, well, you need all kinds of things. So
we do.
There you go. Did you still want me to go ahead and read about boundaries and then we can talk
love
to
it.
Or okay.
100%. I'm here for it.
All right. I'm so excited.
And, Misha, this is Christy has the workbook that's for it's kind of Smart Recovery's version of Al-Anon. I've been reading from the Smart Recovery workbook, and she's reading from Friends and Family, which is their version of Al-Anon, and it's pretty good stuff so far.
Yes. Misha, I understand that. It's nice to be back. There's that other part of you that's like, oh. Okay, so
there's you there, Misha. 100%.
There's two parts to this. So this is part one, and I think this is really good. Okay, healthy boundaries. Identifying and communicating your boundaries. Boundaries are the guidelines that we identify to define what we feel are reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave around us and to treat us. Initially, it may be easy to shy away from the topic of boundaries, especially if we think of boundaries as restrictive walls that close us in and shut others out. A more helpful way to think of boundaries is to think about the true function they serve. Clear boundaries can minimize miscommunication and free us to enjoy a healthier relationship with our loved one. And I love that. It's not to close us off and shut us out, but to help us have a healthier relationship. Addictive behaviors are often in direct conflict with healthy boundaries. In active addiction, respectful behavior that you used to take for granted is often replaced by new unacceptable behaviors. Learn to leverage the communication skills and the expectations regarding these new behaviors. Restoring healthy boundaries is a key to reestablishing mutual respect in your interactions with your loved ones. Healthy boundaries. Why are boundaries relevant for family and friends? All people in healthy relationships have healthy boundaries running smoothly in the background as the basis for mutual respect between the two parties. We may never think about them until the relationship becomes unhealthy or experiences problems. Without healthy boundaries, when facing challenging relationship issues, such as those that often accompany addiction, it is common to give up or change our own values in order to keep the peace and hold on to the relationship. Healthy boundaries, on the other hand, can allow us to maintain and enjoy the relationship more, while at the same time staying true to our own values and our own direction. People with addiction and those who are close to them are often found to have weak boundaries and can benefit from personal work to explore, define, and communicate their personal boundaries. What do we mean by boundaries? Boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that we identify for ourselves, but what we desire in the way of reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave around us. An example they give is, I do not want to be subjugated to secondhand smoke. I do expect you to pay your share of the rent by the first of the month. Boundaries also include those decisions we make about how we will respond when someone steps outside of those limits we have identified. Boundaries are not brick walls. Walls are meant to keep people out. Boundaries are fences meant to mark out personal space, rights, and preference.
Right on.
Healthy boundaries are not about the other person. I think that's really important.
I do
Or
too.
their actions. They are about the self. Having healthy boundaries is how we remind ourselves and others that our trust, affection, time, energy, health, and friendship have value and will be protected. Healthy boundaries are a sign of respect for ourselves and our desires. Example, I do not want to be subjugated to secondhand smoke. Please smoke outside. I understand that you have had a lot of unexpected expenses this month. Please remember that rent is due on the 1st. What sort of person has boundaries? All people have a sense of how they wish to be treated. So all people do have boundaries, even if they don't use that term. People who are not well practiced in communicating their boundaries frequently experience enormous frustration when others violate their rules of acceptable behavior. And then in parentheses, they have boundaries. Learning to effectively communicate our healthy boundaries can work to alleviate frustration. And then it's got this really cool boundaries questionnaire. You probably can't really see it too much. I'll put a picture of it up in the group. But it's a true or false questionnaire, and I'll kind of let's see. There's kind of a lot in here, so I'll just pick a few out. I am supporting someone financially who should be able to support him or herself. My loved one has been responsible for causing damage or theft of my property. I don't give any thought to my own happiness. I give and give and give in this relationship, and in return, I get less and less and less.
Ooh.
I can only be happy if my loved one is doing well. Otherwise, I'm anxious. I do not feel like I'm thriving, only surviving. My loved one is verbally or physically abusive. My loved one expects me to be a backup alarm for work, school, if he or she oversleeps. My loved one doesn't clean up after him or herself. My loved one does not follow through on promises. There's a whole bunch more, but that's just a few. How do we know we have a boundary issue that needs addressing? Some signs that we may need to focus on boundaries: feelings of depression, fatigue, anxiety, burnout, powerlessness, panic, and extreme anger. Attempting to keep the peace by putting up with things, trying to control things we cannot control. Problems with making decisions, defining goals for ourselves, getting things done because we've devoted ourselves to trying to manage someone else's life's addictions of our own. Who benefits from boundary communication? One of the consequences of addiction is a loved one's behavior that is often unknowingly hurtful, disrespectful, or disturbing to family and friends. In the short term, it may seem easier to keep the peace and not add to the drama by discussing your loved one's disturbing behavior. But think about the long term. What is the likelihood that things will improve if friends and family never share with their loved one how their behavior is affecting those closest to them? I like that. I think that's profound. You do not know what you do not know. And,
That's
like,
right.
uh, in the short term, I read that. Healthy boundaries provide a way for friends and family to respectfully communicate the problems they are experiencing with their loved one's behavior and to request alternate behaviors. And then it says here at the bottom is a quote: "You are the center of everything. You are the most important player. You need to have the energy and heart to keep going. To make sure you do, you absolutely must take care of yourself." How to establish healthy boundaries. In order to establish healthy boundaries between yourself and others, first, identify the symptoms of your boundaries currently being or having been violated, or ignore. Some symptoms to look for are anger, frustration, feeling powerless or hopeless.
Woo.
Yeah. Second, take responsibility for your own upsets. Identify the irrational or unhealthy thinking and beliefs that have led you to allow your boundaries to be ignored or violated. Third, identify new, more rational, healthy thinking and beliefs, which will encourage you to change your behaviors so that you build healthy boundaries between yourself and others. Fourth, identify new communication skills you will need in order to sustain healthy boundaries between you and others going forward. The key here is sustain. Fifth, implement your new healthy boundary building beliefs and behaviors in your own life so that your space, privacy, and rights are no longer ignored or violated.
Right.
Where to start? Seventh, I listened to the wisdom. um, Gain some experience and some confidence with communicating small boundaries before moving on to the larger ones. I like that. And that's something I use a lot in my life. You know, you start with the small ones, you get the confidence in those. And then by the time, you know, and then you're at those large boundaries or whatever before you ever realize it. You may wish to practice boundary communication with someone other than your loved one in order to gain experience and confidence in speaking up for what you expect from others. Whether you start with others or your loved one, consider beginning by addressing a smaller issue, such as not being inconvenienced by a coworker, your loved one not cleaning up after herself, your loved one not participating in household chores, before tackling larger and more personal issues, such as behaviors directly related to substance abuse. What are some examples of boundary problems you might like to address? How to communicate a boundary effectively. Communicating in a direct and honest manner is a critical component to setting boundaries. It is impossible to have a healthy relationship with someone who has no boundaries. I'm going to read that again. It is impossible to have a healthy relationship with someone who has no boundaries.
That is true.
Yes. And who cannot communicate honestly and directly. Learning how to set boundaries is a necessary step in learning to be a friend to ourselves and to others. Since boundaries are about the self and not about the other, they are best communicated in form of I statements. Sample format. When you do blank, I feel, when you do, and then your behavior, I feel your reaction. Can I ask you to stop or change this behavior? Here's an example. When you have the TV turned up loud, I feel frustrated because I can't hear the baby monitor. Can I ask you to turn down the volume, please? When you don't let me know where you are, I feel very worried about you. I would like in the future if you would call and tell me you are going to be late. What to expect when you communicate a boundary. No matter how skillfully friends and family communicate a boundary, loved ones may likely see the boundary as an attempt to control their behavior. And if this is the case, resistance is to be expected. Reminder. In the event of a hostile response from a loved one, your immediate safety is the first priority. Postponing boundary communication may be the best option. The boundary communication may need to be delivered in a calm manner multiple times over several days using the I statement format or using PIUS style of communication. That's in section 6. Remember, boundaries communicated to a loved one who is intoxicated may not be heard. If your loved one continues to cross the boundary, a further step in the form of deciding and communicating what action you will take in response to future violations may be required. And it sounds like they addressed that in part 2.
Okay.
Basic guiding principles for boundaries. Boundaries are invisible fences essential to protect me. It is my responsibility to know, communicate, and protect my boundaries and limits. When I know my own boundaries, I can respect others' boundaries. Facts regarding boundaries. No one has or keeps perfect boundaries.
True.
And I like things that remind us all that we're human and that not anybody is doing it perfectly. I like that. I think
Right.
that's encouraging. Everyone struggles to establish and maintain healthy boundaries throughout life. Boundaries offer protection from others who might knowingly or unknowingly control us, hurt us, use us, manipulate us, or use us.
Yeah.
The importance of boundaries when dealing with addiction. We all have personal boundaries, and when we are in healthy, functional relationships, boundary violations are often effortlessly worked out between the two people involved. Consider that. As a friend or family member, someone with addiction, we are often affected by a loved one's manipulative behaviors. We may find ourselves feeling angry, frustrated, disrespected, or powerless. These are signs that personal boundaries are being violated, yours and your loved ones. Communicating and working on boundary violations requires effort, and the communication is often challenging, but not impossible and definitely worth the effort. When my boundaries are violated, there are several things I can do. I can communicate to my loved one about how their behavior is affecting me. I can request that the behavior be changed. I can decide upon and communicate my plan for dealing with future hurtful behaviors if my request is ignored. That's in part 2. I can follow through with my plan to protect my boundaries. That's also part 2. By taking action and following through with my plan to protect my own personal boundaries with a loved one who has an addiction, I not only preserve my own sense of self-worth, but my loved one experiences natural consequences of his or her behaviors. By not protecting my own boundaries, my loved one gets the message that his or her behaviors are acceptable.
Yeah.
And then this is the last thing. Remember the hula hoop. Imagine that you have one around you right now. It magically hovers around your waist area all the time. Now imagine that everyone else has them too. So often we spend an incredible amount of time and energy on things we can't control, and then we get mad at ourselves for failing to do what was never possible to do in the first place because it was not within our control. Okay, you might say, but what has that got to do with the hula hoop? Think of the hula hoop as your very own sorting tool for differentiating between what you can and cannot control. In other words, if it's in your hula hoop, you can probably control it. If it's out of your hula hoop, you cannot control it, and all efforts to do so are wasted. What is in your hula hoop? Your body, your thoughts, your actions, your opinions, your values, your dreams, and your wishes. What is out of your hula hoop? In really big letters, it says everything else. Other people, other people's thoughts, other people's actions, the weather, etc., etc., etc. Are you starting to get the picture here? What is yours is in your hula hoop, and those are really the only things you can control. Everything that is not yours belongs outside the hula hoop. Now, this may sound pretty simple, but you would be amazed when you really start doing some sorting how often you find yourself in someone else's hula hoop. Imagine that for a minute. Picture yourself merrily hulaing away with your own hoop. Then picture yourself hulaing. I can't even say that word. Y'all know what I mean. 2 hoops. You may say, I can 2 hoops. And you may be right. But can you do 2 hoops with another person in the middle of them? I like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really profound. Like I really like that. And I'll post the picture, the guides and stuff like that in the group, so that in the Facebook group, so that everybody can take a look at those and print them off.
Okay.
I stopped and said to myself,
read the one before it.
A friend of mine posted something about how tired they were about standing in the rain and holding the umbrella for everyone in their lives, yet nobody even notices. Then I started to relate. Then I stopped. I said to myself, yes, it does get so frustrating. Then again, whoever asked us to hold the dang thing to begin with? I
Thank
like that.
you.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
you
Yep.
kind of get caught, like if you've ever gone into a restaurant and you open the door, like there's
Uh-huh.
common niceties. And then all of a sudden, like you're there holding the door, not just for your family, but the old couple that's coming in. And then, for all you know, you're a greeter, you might yell, well, this is my job now. Welcome to the Golden Corral. I mean, it's
Right?
that whole like people pleasing thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's a joke like, and I think we're 7-day Adventists now. And my husband's like, no, that's not how it works. No, I'm pretty sure it is. They came by. I've got some reading to do. But because you don't want to let people down when really that is how you let people down is
Mhm.
by not defining how you treat them. And I liked how it said you are manipulative if you're not. That's a hard pill for me to swallow. That if you're not expressing your boundaries, then you are manipulating people
Mhm.
because you do have needs, even if you can't acknowledge them. And if you're not meeting those needs or if you're letting people tread on you, then at
Mhm.
some point you're going to do things so that you feel like you have autonomy or control again. So that, and an example is I'm such a good host, I can host myself out of my own house because I understand that the hosting happens before they show up and then
Mhm.
you get out of the way and you let them enjoy your space.
Right.
When you do that, when you allow your space to become their space to the tune that you don't set boundaries, like I'm locked in my bedroom with my son who's literally got his stitches on his face from their dog that attacked our cat, and we're
Uh-huh.
literally huddling in my bedroom while everybody's drinking beer and having a party because I don't have boundaries to say the dog needs to get out of my house. This isn't okay. And it was
Right.
my husband's family. And so the next day they were all just posted up, gonna hang out for another day of enjoying our space, which I'm happy, but I had had enough. So then I said things that I knew would be upsetting and got
Mhm.
them to leave, and then I was mad at myself and I felt guilty and had to talk it out in therapy. And she was like, well, you still found a way to meet your needs.
Right.
And that's the dysfunctional way of being afraid that people will abandon me or be disappointed, so my need to make everybody feel at home in my home has me to where I don't feel welcome in my own home.
Right.
So that was eye-opening to me because I did end up saying something hurtful that I knew would be hurtful, and sure enough they packed up and left, and a
Mhm.
controversial topic. And then I had to be proud of myself because I still met my needs. I did need my space back. I did need for them to leave.
And you
Mhm.
did need for the dog that bites your son's face to not be there.
Well, my son was carrying our cat, and the dog bit the cat, and the cat clawed up his face and
Okay, gotcha.
flayed open his. But me, like, we had, allowed them to bring 4 dogs to our house,
My
and
word.
our cat was, one of the, well, but 2 of them's dogs were fine, and the other one's like a little cat dog. Anyways, that's just us not saying, no, that's too much.
Right.
And then, I
You know,
needed to set a
in
boundary.
recognizing that, a lot of times we recognize it, we don't recognize it in time,
Mhm.
until we are blowing up.
Right. Well, and if you don't want to disappoint people and you can't say, no, I have my own pack of dogs and cats that live here. This really isn't going to mix well,
Yeah.
And then we did know that the dog was being too violent to the cat. And there were steps that, me and my husband could have taken to protect the situation from occurring in the first place.
Yeah.
One being locking her in a separate room to where the dog couldn't get to her. But, in hindsight's 2020, I'm
Right.
just mainly talking about how a failure to set a boundary led for me like feeling super guilty and ashamed at the way I got them to leave.
Right.
At the way I was able to meet my
Yeah.
needs,
Oh,
right?
Right. Right. Now, are you better about that now that you've seen that, or is that something you're still working on?
I'm still working on it, and
Mhm.
I sort of like even with my husband, and it's just, and I do pride myself on being honest, and so I look at it as lying, like it's at least a lie of omission because I'm unable to tell my truth. I'm unable to say,
Right.
hey, this is what I need at the time. And I know a lot of it is fear that, I'm going to be denied. Like I'm going to say, this is what I need. And then I'm not going to be respected anyways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but that doesn't make it right. And then it's interesting, like learning how to set boundaries, you can go too far the other way.
That's true.
And you can be
Yes.
like,
I've done that.
boundary, 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 boundary. And then you're like, well, now I'm all walled in and, but
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I have done that one.
right. And that's okay. It's giving space for that too, because we don't really know what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out.
And that was
And my
exactly it.
daughter, who's 14, is dealing with this right now in a friend relationship, where like the hula hoop thing, they're literally like bumping into each other and tripping each other in the hall and kind of physically pushing each other in ways that it makes my daughter uncomfortable. But she's having a hard time saying, setting clear boundaries and not doing it in a way that's harsh, and then understanding how she's feeling for being a 14-year-old girl. Oh my God.
Ooh.
I remember when
Oh
my
my
girls were 14, and that was the hardest. That was the hardest age. From 14 to about 20 was really tough.
That
Really
area between being a kid and an adult,
Yes. Yes.
everybody around you, and some people trick-or-treating, some people not, some people dating, some people not, like that identity, that finding out who you are. And then that's where the boundaries come in,
Right.
is discovering who you are and saying, this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not okay with. And
Right.
it's interesting because this friend, of course, comes from a different background where she doesn't have as supportive of a home life. And so that's where I have to be careful not to be too sensitive to that and not encourage my daughter to set boundaries. I mean, I could explain, well, this is where she's coming from and this is why she can't see what she's doing, but that's not your responsibility.
That's right.
Right. Right. Right. I'm going to be right back.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard.
is hard.
Do not envy that situation.
No way. Oh God. And that is a brutal age. Like
Oh God. I would not go back. And then I was telling Carol, we were raised with like nobody told us how to regulate our emotions, or that, oh, you're just hormonal, not that you're just hormonal, but you remember you do have extra hormones, and so it's okay to cry, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to feel how you feel.
Yeah.
Like nobody told us that. Everybody said, get outside, go play. So at least I didn't have anybody. If you're not bleeding, don't come back in the house, but
right. No, yes, I was raised the same way.
Oh Lord.
And and it's really tough. So we have a blended family, and I've got 8 kids. So I have 5 daughters and 3 boys. And it is really difficult at that age because you have to give them the power to stand in themselves. You have to give them the safety to defend themselves, however that might look, and whatever is acceptable in your household. At one point, 2 of my daughters were having such a problem with a girl at school. I'm like, look, if you got to throw down, but you cannot manipulate and plot against this girl. I will fix it. However, I don't care if you get suspended. If it is going to come down to a fist fight, do it in the parking lot. Like, at least just, but you cannot plot to ruin this person's life. Now, not that they were plotting to like destroy her, it wasn't diabolical, but you have to learn that too. And, and I did. And this was the thing they said, but we can't fight at school. Well, you can't plot at home.
Right. No, Carol and I were just talking about this, how girls are like so worse in their bullying. Like boys will fight it out, even if school says no. They will literally try to kill each other. Literally try to kill each other. Girls will try to make you want to kill yourself. They will relationship bully you.
Yeah.
And it's a different thing. But I think it's also because as women, we're taught, or any marginalized group, I hate to like say that, but to fear our anger. We don't get to be angry, you're supposed to be a good girl, a nice girl, so we're taught that it's bad to feel anger. And I think that that's, part of the problem is that we have to give ourselves permission to feel those natural emotions that are telling us somebody is stepping on our boundaries. Because without that anger, we don't know that there's a call for action.
Right.
But because there's so much shame attached to anger, it's interesting that that's the only emotion that isn't considered an emotion. Women aren't allowed to feel it. Men get to own anger. And then yet we're told we're the emotional ones. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It was interesting. There's a lot of people who kind of, I get mixed reactions when I tell the story, but this is how I was raised. My dad, so what you got to understand, I was raised a ranch girl, right? So, and my dad said, he's like, just because a man is not allowed to hit a woman does not mean that a woman can provoke a man.
That's right.
If you are going to fight a man, then you better be prepared to fight like a man. Well, my brother is 3 years younger than I, and you want to talk. Now, I was not afraid to own my temper. Ooh, Hobbit rage comes out in me, and I joke about it. But I was actually talking to my mom this morning, and she was like, people figured out how angry you really are. I'm like, I think they're kind of catching on a little bit. Now, I can control my temper now. I used to not be able to. But there was a point, my brother and I got into a fight, and I mean a fight, like a full-blown fist fight. It was my fault. I provoked it. I was 18, he was 15, and we like tumbled out the front door. We were at a place that my dad was like working at. We were at his work. Now, my dad always worked in like saddle shops, so it was like little private places. So, it wasn't anything. Tumbled out the front door. I mean, we were like, this was like a barroom brawl. All right. And so this one guy's like throwing a face like, oh my gosh, they're fighting. And my dad just stood there like this, and he watched the whole thing. And then we finally kind of, because it really isn't going to last that long, right? You're not going to fight for 2 hours. So we got done, and my dad was like, well, that was better than any brawl I've ever seen. And he's like, Christy, go home right now. This is your fault. Go home. And then he let my brother go back, and I went home, and I got in trouble for it. But, it's one of those things that I think there's a safe way to do it. I don't think you should be punching each other as you fall out the front door. But, it is tough.
Right.
And where do those, come from? You didn't think you would make it out saying, yes, yeah, that's.
I really wanted to address this, Seventh, we over-explain our reasoning to do things that should be totally free rights to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've apologized literally for breathing so many times. I spent so much of my life in that. And, and then when I discovered boundaries, and that I discovered that I wanted to have them and not let people walk all over them, over time, that began to dissipate, because otherwise that's what we give people permission to make us feel like that.
Yeah.
And it's not okay.
Well, that's that self-worth.
And they may not even know they're
apologizing.
That's the whole thing of boundaries, Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, when you're apologizing basically for your existence, your whole life, like there's a lot of just shame that, doesn't even allow you, like, that's where I didn't feel like I had a right to boundaries. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like they would be respected.
Right.
And then I didn't even know myself well enough, because I'd been taught, to not be angry, instead of being taught, hey, well, this is a cue. How you're feeling is a cue that, somebody's encroaching on your boundaries, and you're going to have to do something about it. And that's what I am able to, through lots of therapy, tell Molly, like when she's boiling mad, and it's because somebody keeps like pulling something out of her backpack or doing something. I'm like, and she tries to tell him no, and it doesn't get respected. And I'm like, you're going to have to yell it. You're going to have to say, look, I'm done. I'm going to tell a teacher. And so she did. And then she felt bad about it a little bit, but it stopped, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then she felt good because she felt strong. But oh my God, the guilt of that, but for me, like I would have never gotten there to where I could have told somebody, because then I would be afraid that they wouldn't have been my friend. And, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like that.
Right.
Just love me.
And, with my girls, I've seen a lot of that. And I think that's just a natural part of finding who you are. And, the amazing thing that you're able to give Molly that, it sounds like you didn't maybe have, is that you're showing her healthy boundaries. You're showing her what they look like. You're showing her how to set them. And, you might not be perfect at it, but you're showing her, and, and giving her permission. And that's a big thing. I think that a lot of people need permission to do things. And I think that's kind of a sad thing sometimes, because, but I completely understand it.
Yeah.
And, one of the best response to being bullied and setting a boundary that I was ever given was given to me by my ex-husband's mother when it came to dealing with him. And she is a crisis counselor, and she was one of the ones that was called to 9/11. So that's how good she is at what she does. She told me, she goes, have a pat response that is factual, truthful, and cannot be argued with.
Yeah.
And that will shut people down. Like, someone can try to argue it with you, but really at that point, they're just, acting a fool, as my granny would say. And that is the one thing I have found to be most helpful in my life, is when I can come up with that is just pointed, factual, cannot be argued with. It really shuts someone down.
Right. Well, and it lets them know that it's not up for debate. Like when you're wishy-washy about it, and you don't say it with conviction, and you can't repeat it, and you don't know where you stand firmly, then it's up for debate. Or, and you can't necessarily fault people for wanting to push your boundaries, because they're just trying to manipulate their way into getting what they need.
What they want. Yeah.
Right. And so, but it's so hard to do what you said. And then I think a lot of times Molly also learns from me what not to do. Like my older son has very good boundaries. He knows that he doesn't call in, but he doesn't get called in when he was a dishwasher. He does his job. He doesn't overdo his job, where I'm going to get called in all the time. I'm going to be that person. And then I'm going to feel so like, oh, they just take advantage of me. I'm working 7 days a week and no one cares. Well, that's because I'm signing up for it. When they text me, I don't want to let them down. So I say yes. And Zach is very much like me too. But then you feel overworked, taken advantage of, where Rex doesn't, He sets those boundaries. So, she can learn by watching me too. And I can say, see, don't do what I do.
Learned that one. That's amazing.
Oh, I know. Even like I was his manager at the Greenhouse Grill. And so one time I was desperate and I called him in, and he came in. But then afterwards he had it out with me. He was like, that's it. He's like, that's it. It's the last time I get to define my work relationship. I came in because you're my mom and you made me, and I was like, oof, because I couldn't have forced anyone else, But I was overworked at the time, and I didn't want to be the dish pit and the bartender and the manager. So I made him come in, and but he was right. And he stood up to me as his mom. He's like, you don't have the right to pull the mom card, at the work life. And I was like, touche.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah, it is. He's very much like Shane.
Where it sounds like.
Yeah, and Shane is like that too. He's very much better at the boundaries. But then in a relationship, when you're in a relationship with somebody who is strong with their boundaries and you're weak, it's not necessarily a good thing, unless you both learn patience and you're able to talk about it. Right. I spent a lot of my marriage angry at him because I was feeling like I was doing too much when I wasn't able to ask for what I needed,
Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow.
Now, are you in a better spot with that now? Like, have you guys worked through that in some way? Do you have?
Yes.
something that
Yes,
you say to him
multiple times.
in that way?
Well, I mean, he is better at seeing it, yeah, and that not
Uh-huh.
always. I'm not always like when I spiral, but yeah, he's better at understanding. And we've worked on it multiple times, sort of that circular path. We're continuing to work on it. And
Yeah.
sometimes I would be mad at him for having strong boundaries,
Mhm.
and like that's another thing, like with this girl that has a bad home life, like she recently spent the weekend with us, and I think that that's where the bullying, or because she's jealous and she sees that Molly has two parents in the house, and
Yeah.
I can feel how I felt towards being in those situations sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
not that she should allow her to be mean to her because she's jealous, but understanding that
Mhm.
she might not even be able to,
Articulate. Yeah.
right. She's also only 14 and might not understand how she's feeling overwhelmed by
Yeah.
what she feels is lacking in her own life,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and is lacking. She doesn't have two parents. She has alcoholic step parents.
Mm.
Well,
Right.
that would be tough.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, and I love what Seventh said here. Congratulations, Sarah. You raised a healthy young man.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Stood up to me, told me, "You're being bad. You're out of line, Mom." I was like,
That's amazing.
I'm so out of line.
That's great.
Well, I mean, but and it is a hard thing to put into place, and
Right.
no
It is.
matter where you are. And I think everybody has struggled with it, and it all looks different. And you can, like you said, you can take them too far too.
Right.
And
I did that. I did a lot of that when I first discovered that what boundaries were and that I had a right to them. I was like a rabid dog, man. Nobody wanted to be around me, but I just wasn't having any more of it. I had just been so,
Yeah.
You're like setting landmines. Boundary.
Right. I was thinking of the upper thing. You get a boundary, and you get a boundary, and you get a boundary.
Oprah. Everybody gets a boundary.
Boundaries everywhere.
That's hilarious.
But I mean, at the same time, I was ferocious like that, but I was scared, so
Right.
scared, because
Yeah.
I'd never done that before. I'd never said, "Okay, this is the line. You shall not cross it."
Right.
I had never done that. I
Mhm.
just let people run roughshod over me to where I was just like this tattered little flat pancake walking around.
Right.
I was
And
as
then
beat up by that as I was my addiction
Mhm.
there at the end, and what the
And
substance did to me.
have you found that you've been able over the years to be better at seeing, like, not putting all of those walls up, or is that something that you're still working on?
I probably keep a fair amount of the walls still up,
Mhm.
I mean, once you disallow people to, do the things that, you know, violate you,
Right.
sometimes that's just the easiest way to maintain
Mhm.
that health, that mental health. And I'd like to be able to kind of step out some more,
Mhm.
but I haven't really figured out how that's
Mhm.
all going to work.
Right. Right.
Well, it's
And
hard to
that's
trust yourself and
Yeah,
other people.
right. That's true.
It's
yeah.
hard to trust them, or then trust yourself to stand up for yourself and not let yourself
Mhm.
be back in that situation. And
Yeah.
when you're first starting out with a friendship or a job, you want them to like you, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's oftentimes where we misstep, and we subtly start
Mhm.
allowing ourselves to be called in, to be that person, without realizing it.
Right.
Right. Right. Well, and I mean, it is, and it happens so often, and it's so easy to kind of, fall into that, trap. Um, you know, yeah. The important takeaway is he came to help you, Mama.
Yes, he showed up. He will show up. He absolutely
That's
will show up.
amazing.
That is one thing I can say is we do show up for each other. But
That's
I really appreciate the way he shows up for himself too, you know.
yeah.
And even when it goes against what I want him to be doing for me. You know?
Yeah. So let me ask you both, what was the one thing in your life that happened, or, you know, or accumulation of things, because I know sometimes it's not one big thing, that really made you step back and go, I need boundaries and I've got to fix this? Like, what did that look like for both of you?
It was the whole snowball effect of when my grandmother died. And then, like, the expectations that they had on me, you know, and the way that all of that played out, like, slowly it was undeniable what was happening, you know, like in our alcoholic roles, like I was, you know, the scapegoat where I took responsibility that wasn't mine to bear. And then my sister was the peacekeeper. But what I didn't understand in that respect is that mainly meant keeping the peace for herself and piling responsibility on me that wasn't even mine. That as a way. So like I would even ask, Papa, can we do this? Like she would have me go ask for us, you know, like that kind of stuff. And so there's this one thing where I didn't even make a decision. Of course, my grandmother gave me her trust, so I had it. I read some stuff that was disturbing, and I called my sister over because she's a trustee too. And before even reading through it, she'd called my mom and my other sister. Well, the disturbing stuff had to do with my mom being put in a special needs trust. And so then, as my sister's husband's reading through the trust, he's like, oh, she can't read this. You know, she had just lost her husband or her longtime partner and her mother within like 3 days. Like we got released from hospice, signed back up the same day. It was a really rough time. And so they were like, she can't read this. Hide it in your car, Sarah, and we're going to tell her that you took it to the lawyer. So, you know, and I'm telling too much details, but anyway, all of this happens and they're like, it wasn't even my idea to call my mom. It wasn't my idea to hide it in my car and make up a lie, but I allow for all of this to happen. And then the next day I show up to help my mom do something and it culminates into her like literally physically attacking me. And Finn was hiding. I flipped her over in her wheelchair and had to choke her out to get her to let go of me. And right. And so then I like had a seizure the next day from having my hair pulled. I like fell onto Shane. Like it was traumatic and Finn, the whole thing was really bad and violent. But all of that was because she went to bed stewing that I was keeping her from her mom's will, you know. And so like, and I'm sorry for the long story, but there was multiple little things like that were like, okay, like I should have stood up for myself and said, no, that's not what happened. I could have been more honest, you know, like I could have handled myself differently and, you know, I don't know, manage the situation differently. I just let her control all of that, which then culminated into me taking all of the brunt of this.
Yeah.
And then what their requests of me became so unreasonable that I couldn't stay in those relationships without being somebody that I didn't want to know, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Similar to like the relational bully that we're talking about where you just want to take your own life, like, you know, similar to my aunt sending me the letter from the grave, you know, like what are your motives and how can I navigate in these relationships? They had deteriorated to where I couldn't, you know.
Yeah.
And then if you work jobs where you allow yourself to be treated like that, oftentimes you have to leave that job. You have to leave that marriage, you know, the boundaries aren't going to be respected, you know, so.
Yeah. Habits too ingrained. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Especially on a job.
My grandmother was able to maintain control. And when she died, the fight for perceived control became like just nutso.
Insane.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, right. And then that was a big lesson where I was like, I do not have control for this. And it was hard for me because I could not have survived my family without my cousins, without my aunts, without my grandparents, you know, like they were integral to my survival.
Yeah.
So the idea that my kids weren't going to grow up knowing their cousins and their aunts was devastating, you know.
Yeah.
At like at like a foundational level, where my husband grew up in a very nuclear family, and so he didn't understand the cousins, the aunts, like he wasn't around that big family situation.
Mhm.
And then I
Mm,
thought, hey, in my hula hoop, what's the only thing I can control? I
Mhm.
cannot be the matriarch of my sisters and my mother. I cannot, like, I can't do that. I can give my kids a safe place to bring their kids back so that those cousins can know each other. And that's really all I have control over.
that's
Right.
right. That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
Well, I'm
I don't know
sorry.
about you.
I'm sorry that it ended that way, but I'm glad that you came to those realizations.
I
Like
am
that's
too.
very important.
Because I
Right.
mean, the amazing person I've watched you blossom into is just breathtaking.
Oh, well, thanks.
Sweet.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Today was a real hard day where I felt like I was faking it. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. We all have those days.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. We do. Oh. Well, Carol, what did your boundaries look like for you? Like what was the thing or things that really made you stop and go, what is this?
It wasn't any one thing. It was just a realization over time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was 2 years into sobriety,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even remember what the Sunday school lesson, but we had a singles group and a couple that was the pastors over our singles group in the church that I was in, not the cult. And they were a really neat couple. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot of neat things from them as far as how
Mm-hmm.
to be a person, and the kind of person, seeing some modeling of some, maybe the kind of person that I would like to aspire to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what the man was talking about in Sunday school, but just like things that I'd heard, things that I'd experienced, all of it just kind of came together and formed a picture in my mind of, oh, that's what that is,
Mhm.
Ah, okay.
and then, so the people that had already been, running over me and getting me to do things that I would be reluctant to do, you know, I just started, mm-mm, mm-mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I alienated a lot of myself from a lot of people, you
Right.
know, but I started feeling myself have some personal power,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
that was powerful, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, and I didn't have to manipulate to get it, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
There you go.
So
So
Oh, here's a good story if you guys want to hear a story.
sure.
So Mima had just died, and she died when she was 90, and I took care of her, so I would clean up. And when Catherine and the kids would come over, they would just make a mess, and then I would stay and we would clean it up and we would leave. So she's passed, and Catherine's over there, everybody's over there, and it is a mess. My kids are still getting off the bus there, but they're sitting on the porch and not going in.
mhm.
So Catherine tells Grace that Rex and Zach are there every day, that Mima's house is a wreck, da da da. Rex and Zach are there all the day. Takes that very personally and gets upset. And so then
Oh.
I call Catherine and I said, Catherine, Rex is upset because they're not the ones making the mess. They don't even go in. And Grace is insinuating that they're the ones making the mess. And
Mhm.
Catherine goes, that's not what I meant. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she goes, well, I mean, you're here every day. And like, I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be cleaning up after you.
Oh gosh.
Nice.
Right. Like, see,
Nice.
that's how slow I was on the uptake.
Yeah.
And talking about the people that I had in my life that were models for me that I wanted to know were my aunts and some people. And so that's what I wanted to be for my cousins. And so
Right.
that was really hard for me to give up. Like all of that, I lost all of that at the same time. I lost a whole lot of identity in a short amount of
Oh,
time.
yes.
Mhm.
And so,
Yes,
you
yes.
know,
It
and
is.
then that was a whole lot of jam-packedness happening like between Mima dying and my dad dying.
Yes, that is.
That
That
like
is.
really forced like
Ooh.
me to either just drink and die, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
or change, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, there was
Right.
no options. So
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I love that you chose to not die.
right, right. Like, I mean,
Right.
I am not, one of my first things I was diagnosed with was like an adaptive to change disorder, you know. I I will be dragged, and it's like let go or be dragged, you know. So yeah, I had to learn to change.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
it's beautiful.
and I kind of wish Steve was here. And I put a question seventh if you're out there and you want to share. Would love to hear a man's
I
perspective
would
on this
too.
because I know guys have a very different outlook of boundaries just because of where they come from and you know like
We'll see if we can get
I,
Shane to give any.
there you go like
He had to put up with me. Oh, sorry, Annie. Shane, they're wondering what your take on boundaries are. Would you like to give your?
We need a man's perspective.
He said he loves them. Here, let me see. A man's perspective. For audio. Did I turn things off? I don't know. See, where is my? Ah, my phone very well. How do I? Here, put this in your ear. We're getting him connected so he can get his notes.
Okay.
all right I love it
Nice. Hey, Shane.
Hello.
How are you? Good to see you.
Doing well.
good
How are you?
Doing okay.
good
Y'all want a manspective?
We
yes we would love one
do.
So what are you talking about? I know
Boundaries.
boundaries. In what sense?
Well, like how we had to learn to identify what they would be if we were to have them, and how to enforce them once we do have them. You know, basically how we look out for have our own backs, look out for ourselves, you know.
Right.
yeah and like stories of if there wasn't a boundary and how that was or just your thoughts on them in general like any
Yeah,
insight
you
you
know,
have.
otherwise it's let people run roughshod right over the top of you all the
Yeah.
time.
Right. Well, the old saying, if you give an inch, they'll take a mile, right?
That's right.
Isn't that our first introduction to boundaries?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Stand up for yourself.
We can't hear you.
I said stand up for yourself. Don't let people run over you.
Yeah.
yeah
Well, did you always know how to do that, or did you have to learn it?
Well, I think we all have to learn it.
Yeah.
Because at an early age, you're so relying on other people, the big people, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of just trust what they say and
Right.
take that as
And then until it's like, oh, wait a minute here. Something's not meeting up here.
so
right?
You get someone who doesn't have your best interest in mind, and
I can barely hear you. I don't know why.
she can barely hear me. She says,
What is that saying? I can't read.
"It says low power mode.
Okay. We can plug it in.
You're running out of battery."
Here. Can they hear you now? If I'm closer, because I was using the earbud just to hear the conversation.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
better.
Yeah.
Better.
So we missed some of that.
I was just saying that there comes a point where you're going to meet someone that's going to take advantage. And
Yeah.
you have to step back and say, "Hang on a minute."
Yeah.
Right.
See, the hard thing is when you're raised with the people determined to take advantage.
Yeah.
And that's what he witnessed. See, he grew up with very healthy boundaries with
Right on.
parents that, respected him and taught him how to respect himself and modeled that.
That's
which
amazing.
is good. Right.
Yeah.
So now my
Yeah.
question would be, if Sarah admittedly did not have really good boundaries, and it sounds like you have very healthy boundaries, how did you navigate that being married? And like, did you help her set boundaries, or did you just want to pull your hair out? Like, how did that look for you? Whatever you want
Why
to share.
that's why it's so short.
You get a buzz cut so you can't get your hands in it.
Can't hear. I don't know why I'm having trouble hearing Shane.
He said you get a buzz cut so you can't get your hands in it.
I definitely think that I helped her set boundaries or encouraged her. You know, she ultimately makes her own decisions.
Right.
But I was definitely on the sidelines saying no.
Yeah.
You know,
I bet
tell those
so.
people to, you know,
I mean,
X
I
out.
didn't spend a whole lot of time around the family dynamic, but I did spend a little bit, enough time to see what was happening, and it was not good.
No, very unhealthy.
It was hard for him. He showed a lot of patience because it was very hard for him to watch me. Not the worst part is I had such poor boundaries, and he loved me so much that I would sign him up to do things. Like, and I had to learn in our relationship, he had to be like, no, like, if you want to help these people, fine. If you want to do that, fine. Stop volunteering my time. Like, you know, you don't have a right to be like, oh, Shane's gonna come build your stairs, you know, and like
Move your rock, whatever.
Yeah.
Move your rock.
whatever. Really, that was something my mom, like, he was picking up our son, taking him to the orthodontist, and my mom was like, move that log from there to there. And Shane was like, no, I don't have, Katie, I don't have time. And again, it was like the upstate, like it went to France. Nobody tells my mom no, you know, and she told everybody that Shane wouldn't move the log, you know, like, and then, you know, like, we're the bad people, and I'm like, Shane, why didn't you just move the log? Like, they're like, just move it over.
That makes me want to say, like Aaron Smith Levin, my pearls.
Grab my pearls.
Right. It's just like, oh my God, if you'd move the log, this is like 2 weeks of log moving. But like, okay, here's an example. He had a really hard time. Like, we had not a lot of clothes. And so us girls, we just shared clothes.
Yeah.
And so my sisters thought they just had a right to walk in our home, in our bedroom. And he was like, excuse me, no.
Well, Sarah wasn't home at the time.
Right.
And her sister came in.
He grew
right
up
up to the closet and started fishing through her closet. And I was just like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
She was just like shopping in the closet, and I did touch her. I grabbed her and pulled her out of the closet and told her to leave.
Right. Because he grew
It's
up.
fine if Sarah's here and she says you can do that, but Sarah's not here right now.
That's right.
Right.
Wow. Oh, I bet that
You
was a
need to go.
shocker.
Oh, it was. And so
And
then,
you know, nuclear bomb going off.
and it's easier for me to be like, just let her take whatever she wants. Like, I was just like, I just let him walk over me. I let him just, you know, have full unfettered access to me. So
Yeah.
coming in to sharing a life together and moving in together and having, you know, cohabitation, he was like, no, they can't come in our bedroom. No, like, he had healthy boundaries where I did not. Like, my drunk father would just walk into our bedroom, like, we're trying to sleep, you know, and say these weird things. And he had to put up with that. Like, he put up with so much of like me lacking in the boundary department. But he would help me see that that's not appropriate, you know.
Sure.
And that's not normal, you know.
Good on.
So
encourage.
Right.
Yeah.
Encourage
Yeah.
to see.
Right.
And she could take that and run with it wherever she wanted.
It was hard for him.
I know it had to be.
yeah.
No, it had to be. I mean, I wasn't around it that much, but I was having a hard time with it. Just a little bit I was around it. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to just run her into the ground. And she's going to have the responsibility of raising everybody's kids and doing everything else for them.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But in reality, the truth is of this conversation, I was running myself into the ground.
Yeah.
By not setting boundaries.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And like when we set healthy boundaries for ourselves is why we don't have relationships
That's
with
right.
them currently.
You don't have
Yeah.
bad relationships.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
they won't allow boundaries. Like, you know, people, you have to, it's an agreement. A relationship is agreement that
Well,
you
that's a red flag right there.
absolutely.
Right on.
Mhm.
And there's what, nearly 9 billion people in the world. So
That's right.
Only one mom. I only have one mom.
go,
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
No, I know.
And that's a shame that, you know, that's the way it went, that things are now. But, you know, I'm happy to see you where you are right now. It's
Yeah.
good. It's
Oh,
very
yeah. Right.
very proud of her.
right on.
That's awesome.
This is Shane.
Well,
Thanks for
and
being the male voice.
of course, and how awesome that you just loved her through it all. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
that
You
is
know, that's really beautiful.
it is.
Yeah, what a beautiful man's perspective, especially from a man who has healthy boundaries and a good head on his shoulder and can, be encouraging and helpful in a very healthy way. Like
Yeah.
that's very beautiful because not a lot of people get that. And I
Yeah.
think that's gorgeous. Like, thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That was awesome. That was
You don't have to
awesome.
do that. You've got a great laugh.
Nice.
That was wonderful.
That was amazing.
Yes. And let's see. Seventh. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you watched the replay. Not only am I seventh, youngest of 9, no place or anything. What's mine? I just got used to it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see that. I can
Yeah,
see
I
that.
can see it too. And the youngest of 9. Wow. Woo. Yeah, that would be a hard place to, the oldest probably get to be the ones with the boundaries, and the youngest are just kind of they're kind of new to the ropes, and yeah.
Right.
Well, and it depends on, like, the oldest raised the youngest, but
Yeah.
you know, in the case of my sisters, like everything was everybody's, like communal property,
Yeah.
because there was not a lot of resources. Like I graduated high school sleeping in a very broken bed with my sister, where we just kind of like literally in a pile, you know?
Oh, wow.
So I never had my own room or my own space or, you know, my own clothes. Really, it was just sort of.
And I think that's a really important part of development, is learning about having your own space.
Yes. Yeah.
That's very important.
And knowing that when you put something somewhere, you're going to come back to it and it'll be there. Or like
Right.
when you're working and you have money, that people aren't going to steal your stuff, or, you know, that kind of stuff. It comes, you know, like it led to a lot of me to do a lot of weird things. Like I would hide money, you know, I would even successfully hide it from myself, like, because was a waitress and I was making tips. And one time I came home with $100 bill, which is huge in like 95 or whenever,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I lost that. I like moved to Arkansas and I was like, where is that? And one day I was back in my house, you know, because we went back and forth. I was in Arkansas. I laid there, it was probably a year later. I looked up at a painting and I had tacked it up behind my painting.
Nice.
Oh my.
Wow.
I'd already written it off. I was like, it's gone.
Wow. Man, it's one thing finding money, but finding money that's $100 bill. Woohoo!
Yeah, I
yes.
searched high and low.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Well, I mean, and hey, finding $100, like that's good.
Especially back then.
I was winning.
You're like,
I was
yeah.
like, man, like nobody was ever gonna find that.
Right on.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
just
love
wanted
your coat. I was just admiring your coat, Sarah.
Oh.
Your coat of many colors.
My robe.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
looks
Thank you.
beautiful.
Looks like a beautiful jacket is what it looks like.
I will wear it out. I'm not anything that's pajamas that is fashionable. I'm in it.
Right on. I love that
Fashionable.
too. Yeah, because you can walk out the front door and be like, I'm dressed. What are y'all?
Right. I'm so fashionable in my house gown.
That's
So
why I like
seven.
caftans. I've discovered caftans in the last year. I'm
Mm.
like, oh yeah, we like these.
There you
Sure.
go.
Mhm.
So seventh, there was a lot of stuff I could not touch, a lot of rooms I could not go in, but nothing was mine. So
Yeah.
do you feel like you've got more things now? Like, are you on the other side of that? Or are you finding that you're still kind of not there yet? Like that's interesting. I know my cousin's husband grew up, I think literally he had like 16 brothers and sisters. And so it was kind of that way for him too. And he talks about that. And he's still not past any of that. But
Yeah.
that's interesting. See, we always had our own rooms. And I mean, of course, I was the oldest and, my brother, so we wouldn't have had to have shared a room. But my parents did a really good job of setting that, like, I couldn't just go take his stuff. Of course, I mean, it's not like there was a lot of communal stuff that I could have, but like, I mean, they were very like, no, that's your brother's, go put it back, or, no, that's your sister's, it was mostly like toys and stuff like that. So
Right.
where are you guys in the birth order? Are you guys oldest, youngest, middle?
I am a middle child, but me and my sister were like Irish twins. We're just a year apart.
Oh,
And
okay.
then, so there's like two sets of two, and then I have two younger sisters that have a different father. So there was me and my sister. Yeah, and so then my mom had two other children. That was
Oh,
interesting. And then here's something else. So like my sister who lives in France will literally bring empty bags so she can come back and like take all my stuff with her. And here's where I
wow.
fail.
Oh
Here's
my
where I
God. Oh my God.
I know last time
Wow.
I told her to bring toilet paper, and it was before the pandemic. It was like 2019. I was like, bring French toilet paper. The kids will love it because it's pink and blue and green. It's dyed weird colors,
Oh,
yellow. I still have some of it, and they did. My kids were giving it to their friends for birthday presents. They were like, "Here's some French toilet paper," and they're like, "Oh my God, I love it!" But I thought it was weird. But I did fail my daughter there because Grace would come and take her Molly's clothes, like teach her daughters that they could just take my daughter's clothes. And I didn't stick up for her.
Oh.
I know.
Oh.
Because for me, I was like, just let her have it. It's easier. But again, that's my problems. And then, after, of course, they left, she expressed how violated she felt.
right.
Oh.
Right.
Oh,
And angry with them. And then, of course, you don't want them to come stay in your house if they're not going to respect your room and your drawers and your clothes.
well,
That's true.
yeah,
So,
that's
so,
that's very true. That's very
so,
true.
so then I damaged that relationship for them moving forward by not establishing that boundary. Just because
Right.
I lacked that boundary with Grace doesn't mean that I should have allowed her to teach her daughters that they could take the same advantage of my
Yeah.
daughter. But anyway,
That's insane.
right? Live and learn.
We,
It's a wild world.
when we know better, we do better. You know?
Right.
And I'm afraid of losing Grace. Like she's the one that had a more healthy response when Mima died. And then she's the only touch I have to my sisters or family.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do have that irrational fear, like I said, setting
Yeah.
boundaries. And then I have had to do that for my son who has autism. Grace, like,
Oh,
totally inappropriate to him in our home and was
oh,
disrespectful to him. And he was 18 and she thought that I should have jumped on him and I did not. And so I let her, she was going to leave. And I was like, I'll call you an Uber. I was like, there's no way I'm going to tell him that he needs to
right.
respect you when you were disrespecting him to that level.
Right
Yeah,
on.
in his
Right.
home. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, and how is the relationship now with her?
With we have a good relationship. Of course, she's in France, so I mean
Yeah.
the relationship's great. But I had to go play through the fear of her going to leave and not be my friend but still, be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. And my son, invited her to work out, and she did later come out and she said, not now, but he was the bigger one, I thought,
Oh, right
he
on.
was he was like, there's a healthier way for us to process. They were having a disagreement and she was like, well, you're just autistic, and like, like just went after him. Yeah. And I was
Oh,
like, I was the same thing, like jaw on the mat, like, how can you be so like, and he was working on accepting it too. So I'm like, that is just like so disrespectful, to him.
mhm.
And he didn't lash back. And so I thought he handled himself well, but she thought that I needed to step in and demand that he respect her more, and I was like, no.
Right. Oh,
But
wow.
right, I
What?
had to let her pack her bags and throw a fit, and then I had to set a boundary with her using my car, and
Oh,
not calling me. And so
Yeah.
then that blew up, and I was just like, okay, then you can't use my car. If you
yeah.
can't simply show me a little bit of respect, then no,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right on.
Oh, wow.
I wonder if that's, I wonder if seventh son, I wonder if my Steve, he gets a lot of broken stuff to fix too that nobody else would take. He can't pass by anything on the ground, whether it's a little washer or a screw or a penny or anything. He'll pick it up. And I'm like, ew, that's
Right.
nasty.
Well, that's me. I keep stuff for either memories or potential, and I'm constantly, the potential is almost worse. Like, it's harder for me to throw anything that has potential away.
Right. I
Ooh.
struggle with that
Yeah.
actually myself.
But then that's like living in the past or the present or the future. And so I'm like remembering, hey, the space is more valuable than all the potential and all the memories. Let's not
Yeah.
let's not lose sight of a clean table.
Right. Oh, you are barking right up my tree right now.
Now, I
Man.
don't have a clean table because it's got all my crafting stuff, but I tell you what, I am not afraid to throw stuff away. Like one time when my dad was alive, his friend hired me to come clean her house, and it was his business partner. And he's like, are you sure? Because Christy will throw everything away. And I am just that kind of person. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. And then I get done doing all of it. And then I'm like, I have like one pair of jeans and 3 shirts, but that's just, I'm like, gotta go. Um,
We have a
so
cousin like that. We call her the white tornado. And like, if you want her to come help you, be prepared.
oh yeah.
Like,
Oh, that's how I am. I'm like, have you
Yeah.
worn it in the last 6 months? It's gone. I mean,
Right.
in the middle of summer, of course, you haven't worn your winter coat in the last 6 months. So, but yeah,
we joke. It's like, are you wearing it now? It's gone. Are you drinking out of that right now? Like, no.
guilty. Well, and I'm the oldest. And so I think it's interesting how birth order even affects how you see things, like where you see yourself in society and how and so that's why I was interested to see like where you guys were in.
Carol, you're oldest, right, Carol?
No.
Or
I'm the
younger?
youngest by 11 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I used to raid my brother's music collection, I'll admit.
You guys were
Oh,
like only children then. I think 10 plus. And
I
you're
was
almost
like an only child with
Yeah.
3 parents. I sure was. Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's, my brother and I were 3 years apart. And then my kids, my oldest is 7 years older than my middle daughter. And then my middle daughter and my son are 14 months apart. So they're very close in age.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting dynamic. But my brother and I mean, we grew up together. I mean, obviously, fighting, falling out the front door.
But I bet you it was settled after that.
It was. The funny thing was we got along, but not real good until my brother went in the military. When my brother went into the military was kind of when we really started getting along. But that's also the point when I was, like getting married. And then when he got out and when dad got sick and we both moved home to help take care of dad, that's when we really bonded and really got really, really close.
So good.
And my brother, like I couldn't really kind of help take care of dad the way that he needed to be taken care of. So my brother did that, and I kind of like helped more with mom and the rest of the family
Okay.
and everything.
Yeah.
And when my dad finally did pass, he passed at home, which is exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody left. Like I got a call from work. I actually went into work that day and I said, I'm pretty sure this is the day my dad is going to pass. And I only worked like a couple hours, and I left. And when I got home, there was, I think only my mom was there. And then my brother got there, and then she left, and it was just me and my brother. And we had determined who was going to call whom when it happened, and we had everything. And I remember because my dad passed at home, they had to call the coroner to come out and everything. And like that was the most interesting experience ever, like that I had ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And when it was done, I remember we were watching the van drive down the road, and we just looked at each other and we're like, you good? And he's like, yeah, you good? And I'm like, yeah. And then we made calls. Like, we're not a very huggy family,
Right.
but we're very, just very mindful. And my brother and I will sit up and we'll have really, really, really long, in-depth talks. And when I was going through all my stuff with my anorexia and I was getting off the medication, my brother actually had medical power of attorney over me and power of attorney. I had to give it to someone.
Okay.
So I gave it to my brother.
Okay.
And, it brought us closer together. We were always, we fought just like you would, but, it brought us closer together, and I'm thankful for that, So like, even in this really awful time of trying times, it was,
That's amazing. That I love that.
Well,
it was beautiful.
It's that ability to fight that allows you to be close. Like that's what we're talking about with the whole boundaries. Like if you can't
Oh yeah.
have it out, and then come back together and do that heal and recovery and be like, I respect you, understand where you're coming from. Like, Shane and I certainly did. I'm so glad you have your brother. And
Yeah.
I might, my phone might have died. My phone, I think my phone is dying.
I think you're still here. Okay.
I'm
still here.
But I'm sorry if your phone's dying.
Yeah.
Yes, I really have enjoyed this conversation. I would stay forever, but I think it's telling me I need to go. So,
okay. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for hosting.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yes.
Love you.
Bye. Well, that was lovely. A seventh. Bring some guys in and invite some guys to come be a part of it.
Well, I'd bring Steve in, but he's actually it's time for him to start getting ready for work. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and Michael's in Alaska, and his response would be like, "You need him, set him," and then he'd leave. Like, he would just. He's not too into like sharing everything, I just speak for both of us.
And that's valid. I love it. It's gets her done.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was a good meeting. I think I've had a meeting.
I think I've had a meeting. Is anybody in the chat needing a meeting? If so, put a 2 in the chat. And if you feel like you've had a meeting, put a 3, as in heart. Good, all good.
It's good. Yes. That was, I thought that was a really good topic to discuss.
It was a good topic. And that, there's still more that we can talk about on it.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the beautiful thing is that, you know, these are really things that just perpetually go on. I mean, you're always, you know, redoing your boundaries and deciding what they look like.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you age, your boundaries change. And, you know, Seventh, I just gotta say, I love that you're here. I love when you show
Thank you
up.
for
Like,
being
it
here.
makes my heart so happy.
Yeah,
And
for real.
yeah, and thank you for the compliment. I don't know if I thanked you already, but thank you for the compliment about my Snow White. I tried. So, but yeah, and to anybody in the comments watching the replay, drop some comments in the chat. That helps the algorithm, and you know, let us know what you think about your boundaries.
Right on.
Like and subscribe and share, do all of that good jazz, you know. That's important. So, but good. Well,
And for those new to the show, we like to end the meetings with a moment. You're welcome. Thank you, Seventh. We like to end the meetings with a moment of silence for the person who's out there still suffering in their addiction, those struggling to recover because we know that's real, and also those we've loved and lost. And then we follow that with the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the
grant
things
me
I
the
cannot
serenity
change,
to accept the things I cannot change,
courage to change the things I can,
courage to change the things I can,
and wisdom to know the difference.
and wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
And peace, y'all. See you next time. Thanks for tuning in.